So I'm talking with Carol Roberts. Welcome, Carol.
Thanks, Di. Lovely to see you again.
Yes, it's been far too long,
Yes.
but nothing I can do about that right now because I'm isolated in Melbourne.
Yes.
And while there's some very big changes happening in the world, I've worked with you many times and you've helped me and hundreds, if not thousands of other people to work on some of the underlying subconscious thoughts and beliefs, genetic and energetic memories that we hold in our body that can actually affect our reality. And some people might find it hard to understand how that can be possible, but the amazing things that we've experienced and witnessed, especially with so many people that you have in your courses with Genome Healing, with your form of work that you do, it's really quite amazing. So, gosh, there's so much we can talk about, but maybe if you could just tell a little bit about the work that you do first.
Okay, well, look, I think one of the main aspects of the work is to allow the different aspects of the body, the organs, the chakra system, even the chromosomes to have a voice. So we have a particular method of just really embodying those parts of ourselves one at a time, and we give those aspects of ourselves a voice, and they actually speak through the mouth of the person. So I get the person to just be or embody that organ, and I have specific questions I ask, and the information just flows from out of the mouth of the person, and they're actually quite surprised at what actually comes up that they have not been consciously aware of. And so it's very interesting. It's a great way to get a person instantly into that subconscious mind.
And so a lot of those feelings that are held in the organs, they could actually be genetic memory carried down through the parents. They could be emotions that were even felt and held in the cells from in the womb.
Yes.
Early childhood or any time in our lives.
Yes. Well, we know that the main, the first 7 years of life is the time when we are most programmable. So that's when the real subconscious programming happens. And because as a child, we're just like a little sponge, really. We don't really analyze. We just take everything in on a feelingness level. And so whatever's going on, that child picks that information up, whatever's going on in the environment. And if there's fighting going on at home, that child will actually learn behaviors to deal with that. And those behaviors pretty well get locked in throughout their life.
And one thing that Bruce Lipton talks about, he shares how those subconscious thoughts and beliefs and the frequency, the energetic charge of all those emotions held in our body, actually on a quantum level, they somehow will affect our reality in the physical world.
Yes, that's right. Because it's not so much what we're thinking, it's what we're vibrating, it's what we're feeling. There's a little saying, what you feel, you make real. So
yes, absolutely. Sorry, keep going.
Quite often we're thinking in a particular way, and we're trying to think positively about things, about our health or whatever it might be. But when I take people deep into their body and let the body have a voice, it's quite often a very different story. That there's feelings of hopelessness, powerlessness, and even quite often the organs say, I just don't want to be here. I want to shrivel up and disappear.
It's quite incredible, isn't it? And I've witnessed at your courses, not only for myself, but other people, where they've had incredible healings where they knew that there was something from their past that has affected them. They could never even talk about it. And whereas in the class, when they tune into certain organs and allow whatever feelings are there to express, then the shifts and transformations have been incredible. I know, I'm sure Anne won't mind us mentioning her story, that I don't think I know anyone who would have such a deep level of grief that she experienced.
Yes.
Yet that one incredible session where it just transformed her whole life, and something that she was never able to talk about in her whole life, now she can just discuss like it's, you know, going for a picnic or something, because it's an energetic charge released.
Yes, she could discuss just within probably 10 minutes of actually bringing that trauma up that was held. And maybe we should tell the story a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure she won't mind. Thank you, Anne. I know you won't mind.
She's given me testimonials like on video and stuff like that. So, she, as a young child, her mother had a very serious, there was a shooting, and the mother actually was killed. And the child, she was just 2 when that happened. So it wasn't until we went into Anne's lungs that all of this remembrance came up. Now, I mean, Anne, you know, she would have held this for more than 50 years in her lungs, in this, you could say, the cellular memory of her lungs. Even when we went into the heart and talked to the heart, this didn't come up. It was just specifically the lungs. So it came up. She could see the vision. She could see that little girl and the blood on her hands and everything, and just totally in shock. And so we had to quickly clear her shock, the trauma. Thank God we have techniques to clear traumas within seconds and minutes, you know.
And where you don't need to go deep into talking. You don't even need to talk about the trauma at all, do you?
No, we didn't need to talk about anything more. Well, she couldn't have talked because she was, you know, it all came up all of a sudden. And so we quickly cleared it. Probably took a minute or 2, probably 2 minutes. And instantly she calmed down. And she just said, wow, she said, you know, I could never think of, I mean, I knew that, you know, my mother had died early. I didn't know the extent of what had happened because she wasn't told that, of course, as a child. The only thing she was told was that your mother's gone to heaven. God's taken your mother to heaven. But the second part of this was, she said, she remembers as a little child saying, God, bring my mother back. You know, you don't need her, I need her. You know? So
yes.
But she even said that she really did not like this word God throughout her whole life. She couldn't even say the word God. She had such a thing, you know, towards God for taking her mother away. So this had actually affected her on many levels. It affected her spirituality and, you know, her connection with divinity as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we cleared that, of course, too. So
yeah, fantastic. And she absolutely just loved the process, and now she can talk freely about it. She doesn't have the grief anymore. And
no, that's totally gone. And that was, I would say she resolved all of that probably within maybe 15 minutes all up. And that's
amazing, isn't
it?
That
was in regards to the lifelong belief about God as well, which changed just like that.
Yes. And so these processes now, Carol, what's incredible is that, well, for instance, I know with myself that when I said to you about doing a transformation process, because I'd never met my birth father, and I felt it was stopping me having a relationship. And the incredible experience that I felt within myself and the shift was amazing, but the actual physical manifestation of a beautiful man with not only him but his mum and the coincidences that actually happened, I could never have orchestrated. I mean, it is so miraculously incredible, the coincidences that actually fit into every aspect of my life. I don't want to go into the story now, but that actually showed me that when you work on the emotions within you, you actually can manifest something incredible in your own life.
Absolutely, yes.
And so the thing that I'm really fascinated with at the moment, and I did want to talk a lot more about this during the year with all the lockdown and the COVID illness and all that sort of thing, but it's quite incredible what's going on a deeper spiritual level. So the way I see it, because I've had a lot of grief in my life, especially my early life, and separation and loss and what have you, and then also a lot of illness in my life, life-threatening illness. So I've been forced at times, due to ill health and nearly lost my life, to really go within and find my real purpose in life, to face my demons, the dark, the dark night of the soul and all that sort of thing. But what I see happening now on a global level is that everyone is almost being forced to do the same, but without the actual illness there are definitely a lot of people affected by COVID, and it's can potentially be very serious, even though we've seen now that a lot of the statistics have been falsified, but it still doesn't take away that it can potentially be extremely serious, and that a lot of people have lost their lives. So I don't want to dismiss that whatsoever. And then there's already been massive pandemics of chronic illness for years, which has been swept under the carpet and been ignored. But then there's a lot of other people whose lives have been shut down, and especially here in Australia, in Melbourne, where people have lost their livelihoods. A lot of businesses have closed down. The whole world of Melbourne, everyone's world has basically stopped. And so but a lot of us who have had Lyme disease, we're actually all saying, welcome to my world. This is how we've been living for years, because we've been so sick that a lot of us have lost a lot of finance. We've lost our ability to work, to socialise, to have a life. And so, but what has also happened, like a lot of people have had life-threatening diagnoses like cancer or what have you, they are forced to go within themselves and find a real meaning for their life and why they really want to live. And so in a way, I think people who haven't experienced those things before, they've almost had an opportunity or been forced into that sort of world. And a lot of things, I know some people are probably having a really terrible time with it, and I know the suicide rates have been terrible. I mean, it's devastating what has happened. There's no doubt about that. But on the flip side, if we can, it has happened. I mean, I've been fighting it the whole way. I've been sometimes just so shocked at what's happening, and I just want to scream and yell, and I keep trying to tell people, what I've experienced, that this has actually been happening for many, many years with people with Lyme disease, that medication has been suppressed. Doctors have lost their licenses. People have been left to die and suffer with no proper treatment. So there's a whole lot of things been going on. Okay, having said all that, it was only getting worse. The children's health, we've got a terrible epidemic of chronic illness in children and in adults, things that we never saw before. The autism rates are terrible, and all of the, asthma and allergies and anaphylaxis and all that. And there is nothing more precious than our children. So in a way, this sort of had to happen. Something had to stop and just say, hang on a minute. I mean, the environmental issues, although I think climate change has been manipulated drastically, but so many things were really heading in a really bad way. So in a way, we've had a chance to say, well, hang on, we have to stop and look at what's going on here. And so what would you say on an individual level to start with for people who maybe haven't experienced the sort of things that we've experienced before? I know you've worked with hundreds or thousands of people who have been doing all this work, internal work, and have been able to create a reality by changing their subconscious thoughts and beliefs. And a lot of people during this time, I've actually been loving isolation. I've been having a really great time. It wouldn't look like that on my Facebook feed, on my social pages, because I'm trying to wake people up and share a lot of information to what's actually going on. So, but I do also sort of share things about my wonderful garden and the chooks and enjoying time with family, which is what I've been doing and really quite enjoying it.
Yeah.
So what would you do? What would you say for people who, we've all been influenced by this lockdown? Oh, sorry, here in Melbourne. I know where you are in northern New South Wales. Mostly you're all sort of getting back into life like normal. But for people who have been affected a lot, and also people who may be scared of what's going on either in the medical arena, the political arena, or the actual virus itself. So what techniques or tips or for each individual to start off would you give?
Okay, so what I'd say is that, well, firstly, yes, sometimes it can be very difficult to hold a positive attitude when all of this is happening, so much bad, and we can see that. But on the other hand, there is a massive awakening happening. There is a great awakening. And that is more and more people are waking up, and they're starting to think, well, where am I putting my priorities? What is really of value to me? And so they're coming back to themselves and maybe, having a look at what is it that really enriches their life, because so many of us have been running around, like a chook with a head cut off, doing all of these things, but
absolutely,
do they really matter, in the bigger picture?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really, really important to, well, firstly, I would suggest to unplug from mainstream media for a start, because, and television, it's there to tell a vision.
Ah, yes.
It's there to promote a vision. We need to actually start to have a look at what it is that we want to start to project, or what is it that we want to hold in our consciousness, rather than having a bombardment of other people's visions.
That is so true, Carol, because what are we holding in our consciousness? Being here in Melbourne, I'm actually helping to support my partner's father, who's elderly, and he often watches the television. And I got to the point where, at first, when I would hear it in the house, I would often try and think, okay, I'm strong and I can just switch off to that, what's going on.
Yeah.
But what I began to notice, it's a daily thing.
Yeah.
And it was programming. And although my mind, I've switched off the television probably 25 years ago. My children grew up for years not having a television at all.
Yeah.
And if we did, it was only to watch movies that we chose for fun.
Yeah.
Or certain programs, and the rest of the time it just wasn't on.
Yeah.
And so for all those years of having my own thoughts, my own feelings, not tuning into what else was going on around the world,
yes,
I just had this incredible depth of peace and real strength in who I am and how I want my life to be.
Yeah.
And since being here, and that television just, and I would just try and switch it off,
Yeah.
or switch it out of my mind, but every day hearing it and hearing it and hearing it and hearing it. And then I was suddenly like, oh, and I found myself so anxious every day.
Yeah.
And so it actually changed my vibration.
Yes.
It actually changed my frequency.
That's exactly right. It's the frequency. It's it's what we're allowing ourselves to be affected by in our environment. Now, we know that there's a lot that does affect us. There's a group consciousness of others and their ways of thinking. It could be, you know, work dynamics. It could be family dynamics. It could be just the group consciousness, the energy of all of the fear that's happening. So,
absolutely.
you know, we tend to be, if we're not careful, we can actually get, how do you say, we can get drawn into that, and we can become overwhelmed. And it's really not even our energy; it's others. How do you say, influence on us. And so we have a little exercise to be able to just step out of foreign events, which is really, really powerful, and which I can share if you like.
It is very powerful. Yeah, that would be fantastic. And I might even just say, having just spoken about that with the television and being influenced by other people's fears, by other people's feelings, is that one thing that I've worked with you and done a lot of breath work on is I was adopted from birth. And so, and then having my adopted mother die when I was 3.5, I knew I had a lot of traumas to deal with. Yeah. One thing that I didn't expect during a lot of my healing processes and counselling, breath work, the genome healing, one thing I didn't expect was that I did a lot of work that at first I didn't realise what it was, but then my breathwork practitioner years ago, she helped me to realise that a lot of these feelings that I was having that I couldn't put into words, I couldn't make sense of what they were. What she helped me to realise was that they were actually subconscious memories of being in the womb. And there was an incredible amount of fear. Yeah. And so, and a lot of things that my mother was going through and the people in her lives, I actually picked up on those feelings.
Well, yes.
And with a lot of my therapy that I've done, it was about being able to release those feelings that I held in my body ever since I was in the womb.
Yes, that's exactly right. I've actually taken quite a few people into becoming little them in the womb. In the same way as we can actually become an organ of our body or a chakra, we can also, go back and just embody that little us, the little aspect of us. So you could say the inner child or the small child in the womb. And I tell you what, so many. I had a man just recently, and he was as the little child, because I got him to speak on behalf of that little child, and he was just terrified because his mother was thinking of aborting him, and he picked that up. So he throughout his life, he'd always felt that he wasn't supposed to be here. And in fact, at times he felt suicidal because it's almost like, well, I'm not meant to be here. I'm meant to be dead.
It's incredible.
On a subconscious level.
Yes, yeah. I would never have believed it years ago until I experienced it myself. And what was amazing is that I actually got in touch with my mother and I said, and I actually gave specific time frames because I noticed a pattern of things that was happening in both of my pregnancies with my 2 girls.
Yeah.
And I actually had started the breath work and a lot of these sessions that I was doing before, in between both of my girls, and then while I was pregnant, and I started to notice these patterns and these events. And then I rang up my birth mother and I said, what happened at 8 weeks and what happened at 4 months? And I said there must have been a lot of fighting. And she said, oh yeah. And she actually confirmed specific times and events that happened. Yeah. And it was incredible. It's sort of, you think, how can that be possible? But it's, you actually can tune in and, like you say, listening to the organs, listening. I know when I did the breath work back then, we weren't doing specific organs. It was just listening to the body. Actually, I do remember my breathwork practitioner asking me what's happening in your knee, what's happening in your belly. But then you've become your work is even more specific with each organ or any area of the body whatsoever, any area of concern. So.
And, as you know, we go in even deeper into the organ with the masculine and feminine side.
Yes. So the feminine energy that may be carried down through our mum, or the feminine side of our father, like you've got the male, the sperm and the egg come together, create the first cell, which divides and divides until we have the whole body. Yeah.
Yes. So
amazing.
That we find that when we connect with the feminine of the organ and the masculine of the organ separately, they always have a different voice. They have something different to say. When I ask them each side how they are connecting, and if there is, a great flow, or is there a wall? In nearly every case, there's a wall between the masculine and feminine. Now, where does that come from? And that's in nearly every organ we deal with.
Absolutely.
There's this yin-yang imbalance. And my understanding is that, well, think about it like this. Every cell in our body holds 23 chromosomes, male, 23, it's 22, I might get this a little bit wrong, but there's either 22 or 23 male chromosomes, 23 female chromosomes, and one of each sex chromosome. I think it's 22 and one of each, 23 all up. So within every cell, there is that yin-yang. There is that masculine and feminine. And of course, the organs are made of the cells.
Yes, yeah.
So every part of us actually carries that masculine, feminine, you could say that the gender there, in a sense, that principle. And so that's where we find that when you go in and you find out where these really deep hurts are between that masculine and feminine, because they've been handed down for a long time, ancestrally as well. It's not just our experiences in this life, or even
I think you give the experience about the mouse that is trained to eat something, but every time it eats the red cherry, it gets zapped. And then 5 generations later...
Cherry blossoms. What it was is that, I think it was small baby mice. They put the mice in front of... they put the mice in front of cherry blossoms, right? But every time they would give them a shock, right? An electric shock. And I think it was 5 or 6 generations down the track, the baby mice were still afraid of cherry blossoms.
Even though those generations weren't exposed.
That's exactly right. So that was the proof, and they've done other, experiments in showing this same principle, that it's like energetically, traumas can be handed down, fears can be handed down, anger can be handed down. It's like, it's because those emotions, if they haven't been resolved, they can affect, the offspring down the track.
And so now I'm feeling like I've got the opportunity to hopefully share. It's hard to share when someone hasn't experienced these things, how these emotions we hold within us, or that may have been carried down through the generations, could actually be creating the lockdown, or the whole COVID thing, or our whole reality, our whole existence.
Yeah.
And so...
Good point, Di.
Yes.
My way of seeing it, and I think it's the same as yours, is that it's our vibration that actually, as we vibrate out into the world, everything that we think and feel is actually, you could say, makes an impression in the world. And so the vibration actually attracts a particular situations and people to us. So it's sort of like that same principle of the law of attraction. right?
Yeah.
So it's really about creating the inner world of peace and harmony,
Yeah.
because the outer world is simply a reflection of the inner world.
And I have to say that so many, I know if anyone listens to this and don't understand what we're talking about, they're thinking, how can I be creating this whole awful, horrific,
Nightmare.
devastating situation in the world from an inner world? And if I can, I'll just share what happened with me in Tasmania,
Yeah.
where 22 years ago, I moved to Tasmania to escape the world, to escape the society. I wanted to be fairly isolated, lived in a log cabin, had one of my daughters there, the other one was a toddler, and we lived self-sufficiently. And we had a neighbour who was, people told us he was a drug dealer, lots of guns, and he was letting off shots in the night. And he threatened my ex-husband and the whole family. We had shots through the night. It went on for a couple of years. And this really triggered me to do a lot of my deep breath work and therapy, because I went into a state of shock.
Yeah.
And it was very, very traumatic. I was very fearful for my life, all of our lives, my whole family and my new girls, my young toddler and newborn daughter. And so someone might say, how could I have created that reality, to have this horrible man living next door who basically did not want us there and would happily have got rid of us. I won't go into the whole story, but he did some horrific things.
Yeah.
And we were very, very fearful of our lives, and the police were fearful for us. And I don't really want to hear about that. But anyway, so how could that man represent a part of myself? How could that man represent something in me? And at the time I was doing all sorts of, hippie, peace, love, and, that's the way I wanted the world to be. But I had this neighbour who was threatening our lives and really wanted to get rid of us. So how could that possibly have been true, that he represented a part of me? Well, I found out how that was true for me. And it did definitely link back to when I was in the womb, because I have no judgment whatsoever that I think my mother would have definitely tried to get rid of me. She was only 17 when she fell pregnant. Her father was a deacon of the church.
Yeah.
And there was no way she would have wanted me at that stage. And so, and then a lot of traumas that happened through her pregnancy, and the feelings from her father, from my father at the time. And so my whole existence of in the womb was that I wasn't meant to be there, and people wanted me dead.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And so when I was in Tasmania, we were living on this beautiful property. It was idyllic on the river, had a beautiful home birth in the log cabin on the bush. And meanwhile, we had this horrendous neighbour, drug dealing, gun wielding neighbour who wanted to kill me.
Yeah.
And so I just couldn't fathom that he represented a part of me, until I realised later down, as time went on, I was able to look back and work through a lot of the feelings I had within me. There was a part of me that I'd had so much trauma in my life and so much grief. There was a part of me that just didn't want to be alive.
Yeah.
And he was representing that. And I was very reckless when I was young. I was a bit of a daredevil and didn't care for my health. I had a lot of asthma when I was young, but I'd just take more drugs and just keep on going and faster.
Yeah.
And that was a part of me where I wasn't nurturing myself. I wasn't loving myself. There was a part of me, even though there was a big part of me that did want to be here. I loved being a mother and a partner and giving and caring. But I found it hard to be nurtured because I'd had so much pain. My mothers had left me. One had died, one had given me up, and one stepmother had actually had mental health problems. So there was a part of me that had so much pain. part of me just wanted to die.
Yes.
And therein was the representation of this man in my life. And so the funny thing was, when I moved to Melbourne last year temporarily to help my partner's father, it was the first time in probably 25 years where I was like, right, back into city living. And I had a little office in town, and I was like, okay, I can do this. I'm gonna become part of society again.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, all of a sudden lockdown happened.
Yeah.
So that was a whole new level for me of it actually took me back to where what I was aiming for in Tasmania. When we went to Tasmania, like what I've been living here now, I've been doing the garden, I've got the chooks, we've had a lot of really good family time. Craig and his dad have had some really special time. And it's quite bizarre and so I guess in a way, if each individual can find their own meaning, or maybe somewhere within themselves, where what is there somewhere within them that they probably won't realise it at first, would they? So just say there was, Joe Blow down the road here in Melbourne who might listen into this and think, well, how is this? How can I use this information? How can this help me? And so I would say, and I'll ask for your input soon, but I would say maybe looking at the health of everybody in the family. Is there anyone that doesn't have any 100% health, and it's been sort of a bit often our kids have got these conditions and it's being not addressed, or anything in our lives, I think, that's not being addressed, that we can actually take the time to look at and deal with those day-to-day feelings or emotions, and that can change our reality. I'm not quite hitting the real spot, but maybe if you can elaborate on that for me.
Well, I just wanted to, just something that came to mind for me. It's like, let's say you do have someone in your life, or like you said, that there was that really bad, neighbor, someone who is continuously attacking you, continuously putting you down or attacking you. But we've also got to have a look and see, well, where am I attacking myself? Where am I putting myself down? Because we do have, if we have been trained as a child to think badly of ourselves, if we've not been, which we know that thousands of times over we're told we're not good enough. Usually, I'm not saying with everyone, but we're told that we're silly, or we're bad, or stupid, or whatever, and then that becomes a pattern, and we continue to do that to ourselves. So we end up taking on that role of attacking ourselves. And so, when we come into situations where that is happening to us, we have to stop and think, well, what is it in my field, in my energy field, that is actually attracting this or drawing it? So it's really about taking responsibility, because there are two ways that we deal with pain. One way, well, there are a number of ways, but two main ways. One way is that when someone attacks us or, puts us down, we go on the attack, and we go on the, you could say, the fight. We want to fight. We want to project our pain outwards onto the other person. We don't want to feel that pain. We don't want to, process it. So we go on the attack. That's what we call the fight. But underneath every fight, I've always found, underneath every anger, there's always deep hurt. And underneath every hurt, when you keep going down, there's always a part of the person that just wants to go into flight and not be here. It's like, just run away, keep safe, disappear, shrivel up and die, whatever it might be. Go numb, freeze. So that's our way of dealing, with with these onslaughts from...
And that can be all the day-to-day things in living, can't it? So it's not necessarily big things like I had. Like I had big traumas.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who are living normal lives where everything's sort of going smoothly, but there's still those things where we may have grown up with this belief we're not good enough, or you need to be strong and put up with things, or these certain wants or needs or desires that we have, we're not allowed to have and ignore them. So all of those day-to-day sort of underlying feelings, that's what people can look at, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And the thing is, Di, like you said, you went there to was it Tasmania you went? Where did you go? Yeah. You went there at a period in your life. But it was only after a certain period of you know, it's sort of, you weren't experiencing that all throughout your life in the same way as this attack. So sometimes these things can just come out of the blue because it's sort of time for that particular theme to come up, you know.
Yes.
It might not have been there the whole time, or it might have only come up, but it gets really intense at certain times.
Yes. Yeah, true.
That's when sometimes it, you know, there's a saying that, you know, well, the universe will tickle you with a feather, but if you don't get the tickle, you get the brick thrown at you, you know. So it's like sometimes we just don't get it, and then we don't go within, we don't try to process these feelings, and then we end up having to get a real serious wake-up call.
And I think it's been raining bricks around the world at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. Raining bricks. So it is really definitely the time to sit and really think. But, you know, someone might say, well, how could I be creating this reality? It can't be just me. No, it's not just you. It's the group consciousness of humanity.
I know I can. Just have to breathe in.
Thanks for joining me for Quantum Health, reaching optimum health and happiness with Diane Ellis.
I know I